All right, let's try a little thought experiment. Have you ever stopped to think about how one teeny tiny change could completely unravel a story you know by heart? Well, today, we're doing just that with one of the biggest shows of all time, Friends.
And the change is this. What if Ross never lived across the street? What if he was just always there? I mean, it sounds simple, right? He's part of the group, so what's the big deal? Well, as we're about to find out, that one little adjustment changes absolutely everything.
So, here's our new reality. Ross, after his first divorce, doesn't get his own place. Instead, he moves right into the thick of it, probably crashing at Monica's. Now, on the surface, this seems fine, maybe even kind of fun. But what it really does is completely rewire the entire social circuit board of the show. But before we go and break the whole thing, let's take a minute to appreciate why the original setup was just so genius. The magic of Friends isn't just in the one-liners, it's in the physical space. It's all about who is where and when. You see, the whole show really boils down to two opposite worlds. On one side of the hall, you've got Monica's apartment. It's clean, it's organized, it's the emotional home base for everyone. And then right across from it, Chandler and Joey's place. Just pure chaos, comfy chairs, and just non-stop laughs. These two apartments created this perfect, beautiful balance. So where does Ross fit into all this? Well, he was the guy who could float between both worlds. He could hang out in Monica's structured life and then pop over to Chandler's chaotic one, connecting everybody. But the key, and this is so important, is that he had his own place to go back to. That physical distance, the fact that he could just leave, is the secret ingredient that we almost always miss. Okay, so here we go. Let's pull the pin on this little thought experiment. Ross no longer has his own apartment. He's living with the group, 24/7. Let's see what happens. Let's trace the ripples as they spread through every single relationship.
We have to remember who Ross is. He's not exactly a chill, background kind of guy. He's intense. He's super analytical. He loves, and I mean loves, to correct people. You know, when he's just dropping by, those are just funny little quirks. But as a permanent roommate, his personality wouldn't just be part of the mix, it would start to take over. That need to overthink every little thing would become totally unavoidable.
And you know who feels this first? Monica. Her authority just gets steamrolled. All of a sudden, her perfectly controlled apartment isn't just hers anymore. It's now shared space with her older brother, and that deep, ingrained sibling rivalry comes roaring right back to the surface. Old fights, old competitions. Monica is no longer the undisputed queen of her castle. All right, now for the big one. The romance that defined a decade. To really get what happens to Ross and Rachel, you have to understand the engine that powered their entire story. It's the classic will they, won't they trope, and it's a storytelling device that needs a very specific recipe to work. And the absolute most important ingredient in that recipe, the thing that makes it all click, it's distance. Simple as that. You have to have space for people to miss each other. You need room for those missed opportunities, for all that pining and wondering. Distance is what creates the romantic tension that keeps us all glued to the screen. So, what happens when you just yank that essential ingredient right out of the equation? What happens to this epic on-again, off-again love story when they're not just friends, but basically roommates? Well, the whole thing just falls apart.
I mean, just walk through it. First off, after a huge fight, there's no dramatic storming out, no time to cool off, just an awkward run-in at the fridge the next morning. And second, all those longing glances from across Central Perk, they get replaced by passive-aggressive notes about whose turn it is to buy toilet paper. And finally, all that mystery, that amazing emotional buildup, it just vanishes when you see each other every single mundane second of the day. And the chaos doesn't stop at Monica's door. It spills right across the hall. Think about it. Chandler's quick, sarcastic wit, it works best when it's light and breezy. With a constantly present analytical Ross, his jokes would turn into long, drawn-out debates. And poor Joey, his simple, carefree, how-you-doing world just got way too complicated. That perfect, simple contrast that made their apartment so fun just gets all blurry. So, okay, we've seen how all the relationships start to crack, but the impact is actually way bigger than that. This one change fundamentally changes what kind of show we're even watching. It basically stops being a sitcom. Now, you could argue there's maybe one silver lining here. With Ross living right there, all his insecurities, all his emotional struggles would be on display for everyone to see all the time. The group would definitely get to know him on a much, much deeper level. But that kind of emotional honesty comes with a pretty big price tag. What you end up with is a totally different animal. The original show was so carefree and fun. This new version, it's emotionally complex, maybe even heavy. The whole vibe shifts from a light, easy-to-watch sitcom to an intense character study. And the chemistry, which used to be all about fun opposites, is now just based on constant, underlying tension. So, after running this whole thing through our little simulation, what's the big takeaway? Well, it all boils down to one simple, powerful idea that the creators of Friends understood perfectly. And here it is, the final verdict. By shoving Ross right into the middle of everything, sure, you get more screen time, you get more interaction, but what you lose is so much more important. You lose that delicate, perfectly tuned rhythm that made the entire show work. You lose the balance.
Honestly, I think this one quote just nails it. Ross's placement in the show was a stroke of genius. He was always close enough to matter, to be a huge part of their lives, but he was also distant enough to keep things interesting. That's the magic formula.
In the end, what this whole thing shows us is that sometimes the most important parts of a story aren't the characters or the plot, but the spaces in between. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other little tiny details in the shows and movies that you love are actually the secret ingredient holding the whole thing together? What happens if you change them?